Now we move forward to the next resource person, Alonso de Yanis. He's the program director of the Vatican's Laudato Si Action platform, where he heads global efforts to support the ecological transition of Catholic institutions in the spirit of Laudato Si. He's a doctoral researcher in management at Paris-Cali University, focusing on organizational change, sustainability, and integral ecology within faith-based institutions. With a multidisciplinary background in law, theology, energy management, and development, his work bridges academic research and practical action to advance ethical, ecological, and socially responsible transformation. And we are happy to be part of the Laudato Si Action platform. So, to you, the words, Alonso.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna just share my screen. So thank you, everyone. I'm gonna be as fast as I can because I know that we are a little bit delayed. So before we begin, I want to ask you a simple question. What kind of world are we creating today? Not in theory, not in documents, not in strategies, but in reality. Through our economies, through our lifestyles, through the choices that we make every single day, often without even noticing. If we look honestly at the world, many people feel that something is not right. We see climate instability, we see growing inequality, anxiety, loneliness, disconnection, and we often treat these as separate issues, different problems that belong to different sectors, to different realities. But what if they are not separate? And I think that that's one of the questions that you're trying to answer throughout this diploma. So what if what we are experiencing is actually the manifestation of one deeper disorder, something that affects the way we relate to reality itself? So we often hear about the climate crisis, and of course it is real, it is urgent, and is measurable. But Pope Francis invited us to go further. He tells us that there is not just a climate crisis. What we are facing is a complex crisis that is at the same time environmental, social, economic, and spiritual. In other words, it is not only about emissions or temperature. It is about how we organize our societies, how we produce and consume, and how we relate to one another. And ultimately, also how we understand our place in creation. And this changes the question. Not how do we fix the environment, but what is wrong in the way we relate to everything. So is there such a thing as ecological sin? And I think that Father Josh next book is very in tune with this question. But Francis says yes, and this is a very strong statement because it moves the conversation from the technical level to the moral and spiritual one. So ecological sin is an offense against God, against our neighbor, and against the earth. This means that environmental destruction is not neutral. It is not just the side effect of progress. It has a huge ethical weight. When ecosystems are destroyed, when communities are displaced, when future generations are deprived of their inheritance, something morally wrong is taking place. And recognizing this changes everything, because it means that ecological crisis is not only something to manage, but something to convert. So there is an important step here. If we stop at the level of individual responsibility, we risk oversimplifying the problem. because ecological sin is not only about individual actions. Already in Solicitudo Rei Socialis, St. John Paul II introduced the concept of structures of sin. And these are not personal mistakes. There are systems, economic, political, and cultural, that perpetuate injustice across generations. Systems that normalize what should never be normal. And today, environmental destruction clearly reflects this. So think about the entire economic models that depend on extraction. Like my colleagues were saying before, the oil companies, a very, very good example. Supply chains that hide exploitation of human beings and of resources, patterns of consumption um, that disconnect us from the consequences. So this is not just about bad choices. It's about disorder systems that shape those choices, which means that the ecological crisis is not only behavioral, it's structural. And that is why it matters so deeply. So harming creation breaks relationships. It breaks our relationship with God because creation is a gift. It breaks our relationship with others, especially the most vulnerable, and it breaks our relationship with the earth itself. Laudato Si insists on one fundamental idea: everything is connected, nothing exists in isolation. Every action, every system, every decision has consequences that extend far beyond what we immediately see. When we damage one part of creation, we affect the whole. So what is internal ecology? It's a way of understanding reality as a web of relationships, relationships between the environment, the economy, society, and our spiritual life. It's not just about protecting nature, it's about restoring relationships. It invites us to see the world not as a collection of separate problems, but as a living system of interdependence. And this requires a different way of thinking, a different way of acting, less fragmented, more relational, less technical, more holistic. And let's put a very simple example: a t-shirt, something ordinary, something we all use. But behind one t-shirt, there is water consumption, often in regions already under stress. There are labor conditions, sometimes involving exploitation. There is global transport with emissions across continents. And there is our own behavior as consumers. What internal ecology does is help us see the full system behind what appears to be a simple, small object. It reveals the hidden connections. And once we see those connections, we cannot unsee them. So this lead us to ecological conversion. So Pope Francis defined it as an allowing our encounter with Christ to transform how we relate to the world. This is not just about changing habits. It is about transforming at a deeper level, a transformation of perception, of values, of priorities. It is contemplative because it begins with seeing creation as a gift. It is prophetic because it challenges unjust systems. It is just because it seeks right relationships. And it is active because it leads to concrete action. And I just want to point out that this vision is not new. It is deeply rooted in the tradition of the church from Leo XIII to Leo XIV. I'm not going to go in deep here, but you can see Pope Leo XIII, who emphasized justice and human dignity, Paul VI, who warned about environmental degradation, John Paul II, who introduced ecological conversion, Benedict XVI, who linked human and environmental ecology, and Pope Francis, who bring all these threads together in the concept of internal ecology. Recently, earlier this week, you saw the encyclical Magnificat Humanitas, where Pope Leo point out that internal ecology is a very it's a very indispensable dimension for internal human development and the church social doctrine. So we continue to to build upon this. So it's not new. And this is also a question of justice, because those who contribute the least to environmental damage often suffer the most: the poor, the vulnerable communities, and the future generations. So this is why Laudato Si speaks of the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. These are not two separate crises; they are one. And for example, climate change can lead to drought. Drought can lead to economic collapse. Economic collapse can lead to migration, and migration can lead to political instability. This chain is already happening in many parts of the world. This is why integral ecology looks like in reality, interconnected, complex, and deeply, deeply human. So the question is not longer, do we care? We care because we are already here, all of you. And the real question is, what are we doing? It is not enough to reflect. Concern without action is not enough. And we're called to translate awareness into transformation. To guide this transformation, the Church proposes the 7 Laudato Si goals. They cover environmental, social, economic, spiritual, and community dimensions. And they provide a structured way to move from intention to action. So these goals are not abstract. They translate into real action: renewable energy, ethical investments, education, sustainable lifestyles, and community resilience. This is where integral ecology becomes tangible. And this is where the Laudato Si Action platform comes in. It is a Vatican initiative designed to help institutions and individuals move from intention to action. And it provides a framework, tools, and a global community to motivate participants to take these actions. And the platform offers practical tools, spiritual guidance, suggested action for each of the goals, for each of the sectors participating, and a global support network. It supports a journey and not a one-time action, because ecological conversion, we understand, it's a process. So the platform continues to evolve. This is my last slide. Improving access to resources, training, tracking tools, and helping institutions deepen their ecological commitment over time. So you're very happy to see that the platform is in different languages. It's in Spanish, in Portuguese, in French, in Italian, and in English. We offer webinars. If you're not ready to enroll yet, you can just enroll to the newsletter, receive the updates, and get motivated to do some action at your community. Thank you.